today we have none other than country music Western star Clint Black.
Well, you overloaded the mic with that that thunderous applause.
Yes, hey, you're getting an audience today, Clint. Not with the whole quarantine. So, how are you holding up with the whole thing?
Well, it's getting pretty weird. I would say mostly I'm the guy yelling at the TV screen saying we need to go back to work. Fortunately, I'm not governor of any place.
Yeah.
Because I would have probably made some mistakes by now, but I worry about my people and all of the people involved in the long chain.
Yeah.
For every show, there are so many people who we rely on, and worry about them. And you know, that's what I'm doing. And then aside from that, I'm setting up my broadcast, my studio here.
Sweet.
Where I've got my camera up there. I've been doing this Facebook Live stuff, trying to stay in touch with the real world so that I don't become some kooky guy who really doesn't know how to interact with people anymore.
Which I was in radio forever, where I would just interview the celebrity without seeing them on camera. So I had to go to the 21st century during the quarantine as well. All right, now go ahead, Eric, with your first question.
No doing interviews without your pants on anymore.
I don't want to stand up because I don't have pants on, but there you go. That's the good picture.
We've seen the result of that. Absolutely. Now, Clint, you've been crushing it lately on your Facebook and Twitter, and you just recently did a Facebook Live.
Yeah, I've been, I was having to do all this stuff myself, and I've got this broadcasting software, and so I'm trying to do all this and hit buttons, and I forget to unmute my guitar and all that in the first week, and work my way around it for the second. Hopefully, third week's a charm, no technical difficulties, and getting a balance. You guys are natural broadcasters. This is second nature to you now. So you probably have a good sense of pacing, whereas I can do it in a concert.
Yeah.
But sitting here talking to a green dot, not the same.
It requires a little variation, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've I saw that you exceeded 500,000, I think, followers on Twitter, and then I jumped on Facebook, and I think it said 1 million followers on Facebook. So, you're doing, especially if you're doing it yourself, you're doing all right, buddy. You're doing all right.
Yeah, it's encouraging. It's been 20 years since I had a major label promoting and distributing my music. So I've been kind of I've stayed busy, 80 cities a year, pretty much every year throughout all that. And but all the 10 years with RCA and the hits I had have given me this career, this longevity, the ability to go out and tour that much and to have people tune in, and it's not lost on me. I know I'm lucky. I'm lucky I came along in '89 and was able to build an audience and be able to bring them along for this ride. Those fans who've been following me for years, they know back in '92 when all you could find on the internet were tumbleweeds. I had the blackboard on my website, and I had an interaction with fans, kind of like what we have on Twitter. Okay. I was doing that in '92, and it would be more than 10 years probably before all these social platforms came along, and I let the blackboard go and had an even more direct interaction. I always felt isolated, working in the bars for years.
Right.
I would do a set, and I would get off stage and talk to everyone who was there, and then I became famous, and there were too many to talk to after the show. It was a great problem to have, but I started to feel more and more isolated, and And so that Blackboard really made me feel like I was reconnecting.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about connection to your fans. It sounds like your whole career, you saw how important the fans are to keep yourself to continue to grow and be relevant. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, you know, the first thing is, you know, real fans, they respect my privacy and they respect that I'm not there every minute of the day, every time they post a question to me. Every now and then there's someone who doesn't understand why I didn't answer them, you know, yesterday. And as I'm not there doing it constantly. Usually my longtime followers will jump up in my defense and say, no, he does care. So you want that mainly just to let people know you appreciate them. And I always recognize that, you know, not just the fans, but people that work in radio who supported me all the years. I used to make the rounds in my time off and try to go visit radio stations. And, you know, you can't have all this without everyone's support. And I wouldn't be able to have great musicians to record with if people weren't buying the records. And so recognizing that and just the little things that we can do to say thanks. And, you know, hey, I not only thanks, but I really do like my fans.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple out there, as Gene Autry said, you know, I look out there and I see many, many flowers in our garden. Of course, there are a couple of weeds. And
Yeah.
no, but I really do like them. And I like having the interaction, knowing what they think and letting them know what I think, and making them feel like I'm there and I care. That matters to me.
Yeah. Now I see that you're a Houston boy like me, as is your bride. So
Yep.
what part of Houston are you from?
We lived in when I was really little. We lived in South Houston, down around Howard Drive, and then we moved out I-10 at Bunker Hill, and then to Antoine, and then out further west to Derry Ashford until we ended up in Katy, out
Yeah.
on High Road. So once I became an adult and started playing all over town, I was everywhere. I was down in up in Tomball and down in Clear Lake, over in Surfside and Galveston, and up in Spring, over in, I mean, I was all over town. So I got to know the city really well. And then at one point, you know, once I started touring, I would come back around, and I wouldn't it changed so much in the last 30 years. It
Big
really
time.
has grown.
Houston's grown. What is the fondest memory you have of Houston?
Well, as you started asking that, my mind went to, you know, the bios, you know, camping out, and yes, the bios. That's what,
Bias.
not bayou. You know, we're not talking about the loneliest bayou in Louisiana, which is Bayou Self.
Yeah, by yourself.
Talking about Houston and Buffalo Bayou and Turkey Creek, and you know, camping out, going out to the Addicks Reservoir and camping out, going out there on the 4th of July, and you know, just living kind of Huck Finn life, you know, fishing, you know, back before they called it noodling. We used to grab fish under the banks with our hands, and we would, when they would open the spillway, don't try this, kids. I nearly drowned doing this, jumping in. When they'd open the floodgates at the reservoir with big rains, we would jump in the bayou and ride it all the way from like Highway 6, 1960. We'd ride it, just free float in the bayou all the way to like, God, where would we go? Not as far as Gessner. Maybe Kirkwood, something like that, and just crazy, you know, floating along, and there goes a snake, and
maybe a gator.
Just just stupid kids. And I was 13. I got washed up under a tree that had fallen over, and everyone else made it up. onto the banks, but me, and I was washed down to the bottom and being pushed into the tree, and had to shimmy up a limb to get to the top. And when I made it to the top, all my friends were screaming from the bank, "Snake, snake!" And there was a big water moccasin, very, very poisonous snake right there in my face. And I instantly let go and got washed back down to the bottom. Well, that would happen 2 more times until the third time I made it up. And one of my friends, Mark Hogue, had run out onto the tree and grabbed the snake by the tail and flung it off. And so when I came up for that third time, they said it was okay, and I was able to climb up onto the trunk and get out of it. But there was something like maybe poison oak or something on the tree, that my lungs and sinuses were on fire, and I was exhausted by that third time up. I knew if it was do or die, I had to get out that time because the current was so strong. So stupid things like that. That's my fondest memory. Is that weird?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I grew up
like
in
that.
Baytown,
That's
and
good.
my junior high was Cedar Bayou Junior. So we would walk to the end of my street, and we'd get in the bayou. We had our canoe in our backyard, and yeah, we had to watch out for gators and snakes.
Oh
And
yeah.
jumping off the trestles into the water and just having a blast.
To catch a lot of snakes, and then when I was growing, I'd had enough of that. And here in Tennessee now, it's back. I deal with snakes all the time at my house. We're out in the country, and they'll end up in the garage, or they'll end up on the roof and fall off, on top of you if you're not careful. And so I'm constantly having to get rid of snakes here.
Yeah.
I've had enough of them.
I'm afraid of snakes, and luckily when I wrestled Jake the Snake Roberts in a 3-way, I didn't take the snake, losing the match.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't take the snake. I would not want that. And Jake used to beat up those snakes and was mad at certain wrestlers, and the snake would bite the wrestler after losing the match. So it's good I didn't lose it. The other guy in the 3-way dance lost it. So I'm definitely afraid of snakes.
Yeah. Good plan. Stay away from Jake.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely stay away from Jake. But he's made a great recovery. If you saw his comeback and story, and Diamond Dallas Page, just fantastic guy, got him back clean. So, but he's an interesting character in the back room for sure.
So Clint, I always find it interesting. I mean, your first album, you had 5 #1 hits. So when it hit, but the journey there, how long was that?
It was overnight, 2 nights,
Yeah.
really. It was a long journey. I played the bars for many years, and about 10 years, just eking out a living, and never sure I was going about it the right way, but sure I was going to go about it. And I finally managed to. I met Hayden Nicholas, and he had a 8-track recorder in his garage, and we started working on demos of songs I'd written, and would eventually write songs together. And the first song of mine we demoed was "Nobody's Home," and my goal was always to find a manager. So once I did that, things got going, and it was still 2 years after that break until A Better Man was released. Mm-hmm. So even after I got my break and the record deal, I was still eking out a living in those bars around Houston.
Okay.
And that's how this idea for Killing Time came out. Hayden and I were talking about, we were on our way to some $50 gig, and talking about how slowly the big wheels in the music business turn. And I said, well, I just hope it really gets turning soon, because this Killing Time is killing me.
Yeah, I know those.
I was going to ask the backstory to that, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, we looked at each other and we knew we had a song idea, and we would write that one right away. Um, that was something that I always said, and I think, you know, I still hear people say it because it was what are you, I'm just killing time until I have to go to work, or
Right.
what are you doing over there? I'm just killing time right now. But you know, those things are used for a reason.
That's right.
I remember those
Yeah.
$50 days in wrestling, Clint. Definitely do. And traveling those far towns all over the country and saying, and being in front of fans of what type of audience. Sometimes, what was the smallest audience you played in front of?
One. I was playing in a bar called the Balloon Club one night, and the bartender was there, and then a woman came in, and you know, there was a lot of room in the in the place. She dragged her chair over. She was quite intoxicated, but managed to get a chair over right in front of me and sat down and warbling all the way. And so now I'm just singing to her, and she gets up in between songs and manages over a long drawn out period to tell me that I had just kicked her in the gut. And I took that to be euphemistically in song, you know, killing me softly with his song type of thing. And but she said it as if she were holding it against me, and sat back down and began to rummage through her purse looking for something. I thought maybe a gun. And so I spent the whole next song wondering, what is she looking for and how mad at me is she?
Yeah. Where's this going?
And this soft cedar top on this guitar is not going to stop a bullet.
Yeah.
She seemed so angry at me that ended up being all I could think about for the next song or two.
Oh my.
Wow. Wow. And that process of growth and everything, did you expect the number one to have 5 songs hit number one?
Sure. Demanded it, really. No, I believed in the songs, and I knew I was with a strong record company, but you don't know things.
No, you don't.
Really you may know. I know I'm going to make it. I know that's going to be a hit, but you don't know. You just want to know. And once the first song became a hit, it was like, yes, I was right. But then you start seeing the stories. You know, this is very rare for a debut single, and then the next one, and the next one, the next one, and then you know, before all 5 singles had been released, Better Man and Killing Time had become the number 1 and 2 single of the year.
Right.
And then I thought, yes, I was right about that too. And but then you read, well, that hadn't happened. The last time that happened was with a single artist was 35 years prior with Hank Williams.
Oh.
And
Senior.
Yeah, Kalijah and Your Cheating Heart, which I sang a million times in the bar. So now I have that connection, and historically, and it really starts, I start to understand just how unlikely all this was.
Yeah.
And then when the 5th song goes to number 1, and it wasn't in, there were 2 charts, Billboard and R&R back then. So number 1 on either chart was a number 1. And so 4 went on Billboard and 5 went on R&R. So that qualified as 5 number 1s. And then, you know, you read the article where that has never happened before in any music genre in history. And so it starts to become very apparent that this is that this just wasn't likely to happen, and no matter how much I knew those songs would be popular, that the odds were against it all. And then the talk became, well, when's one not going to go number 1? and that the little part of me wanted that conversation to be over.
Right.
And
Yeah.
let's move past that. And then I think the first song off the next album went to #2 on the national chart, and so it was still a hit, but it didn't hit that #1. Maybe it was the second song off that album, but one of those, it happened, and then the conversation was over, and I wasn't actually wishing that conversation had been over. I'm going to shut this door so we don't hear the phone ring.
Okay.
Yeah. As he jumps back in, and that's the fun thing about we see some of the recordings on Fox and MSNBC and CNN and all these people trying to do these Zoom interviews. Quality is much better in this than some of the people calling it. I like your whole background; it's perfect. Go ahead, Eric. With next question, I know you have 1,000 for Clint, but Clint has places to be, but he's not just killing time with us. But go ahead.
Let me hang on a minute. I've got to go sit around in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're closing it out in 6. All right, go.
I got to go wait for the limo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you. Actually, I want to ask you a bunch of questions, right? Like, when was your big break? How did you get into music, and when did you decide you wanted to do it? But really, so one of my passions. So I grew up singing music because my older brother did. I grew up in Baytown, lived in every part. Got married into a family where every person in my family, cousins, grandparents, every direction has been divorced at least once, if not 3 times. And I'm married into a family that in fact, on next Wednesday will be our 20th anniversary. And in 20 years, I've never met a single person in my wife's family that's been divorced. And being a part of this family has really changed my life, right? And I know you've got an amazing love story, and you're married to a celebrity, right? So, I want to hear about that. I want to hear about how y'all met and how marriage has been, because you've been married since 91?
It'll be 29 years this October.
All right.
Yeah. I got lucky. I found the right person. I finally found Ms. Right. Ms. Always Right.
Yeah.
We met backstage at one of my concerts in Houston, actually, my first big headline show then called The Summit. And we had mutual friends who were playing matchmakers, independent of each other, people who knew both of us and didn't really know each other. They somehow knew we should meet. So we met New Year's Eve at my concert, and we were married 10 months and 20 days later. And, aside from meeting a fantastic woman who is strikingly beautiful inside and out, I met someone who wanted as much to devote herself to the marriage as I did.
Yeah.
So we work hard to protect our marriage and communicate well. When Roy Rogers found out we were getting married, he said, "I'll give you one piece of advice. Don't ever go to bed angry." Now, I'm a psychology buff, so I, as a student of human behavior and a songwriter, I just want to know why we do things. And so I've read, many books on psychology, and one of them, we're talking about that same thing in a more complicated way, which if you look at emotions like drops of mercury on a table, you need to wipe them off right away, because the next one that comes along, they'll join. And
Right.
with mercury, it becomes one blob, and you can't distinguish one issue from another. You'll end up with this big blob that you can never divide back up. So you got to wipe the slate clean as you go, so that you're able to talk about it intelligently. But on top of that, one of the most useful things that I learned from reading those books was that you can't tell someone what their intent was. You can only tell them how they made you feel. and their intentions are their own, and only they own those. And so you better not get into a debate on what those were. But if you assume the best of your spouse or your brother or your friend or your mom or dad, whoever it is, if you assume the best of intentions, you can let them know that something they did made you feel a certain way, and then they can correct you. Say, oh, I had gas. And that's all you saw on my face. I had gas. I was trying not to burp, or I think I'm going to throw up.
Right.
And then I looked at you. And so, so if you go to someone and you say, the other last night or whatever at the party, you looked over at me when I said something, and it really made me feel like I embarrassed you, for instance. And then they can say, yeah, well, you did embarrass me. Or they can say, well, I had gas. But whatever the case, you're telling them not what they did, but how they made you feel. You looked over at me and I felt bad. And they can say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. And you can move past it. But if you let that stuff linger, then one day you just come back and say, you're a terrible person. I've always known it.
Oh, wow.
And so communication, in the simplest terms, don't ever go to bed angry, and don't tell someone what they did. Just tell them how they made you feel and give them a chance to correct the story.
Yeah.
So that's great advice, Clint, about how to tell someone how they made you feel. So it really doesn't, it's a good way to correct people without correcting them, right?
If you're very careful about that with all your relationships, then it's hard for you to be wrong. Now, you can be mistaken, but you can't be wrong. I was mistaken about your intentions, but I wasn't wrong about how that felt.
Right.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I felt this way. And not that you made me feel that way, but this is how I felt when it happened. Is that your intention? And that's something we've worked a lot on, and a part of a group called Reengage, just working with marriages and working on our own, and you build on it every day.
Well, congratulations to you. It's a treasure, and if you can protect it from everything in the outside world and protect it from yourselves, you'll have something invaluable.
That's right.
So Clint, I'm going to jump into, you want another question, Eric? You can grab one more, and then we can talk about his latest projects before we have to, finish up.
Yeah. So I was, my thought on your last point that hit me a while back was, the Lord says, what God's put together, let no man tear apart. And what I realized is the only man who could tear my marriage apart was me, right? Nobody's getting in the house unless I open the door. And I think that's any husband. It's just love your wife and communicate. So the final question I had for you is, who's been your greatest influence? Like influencer to you?
Well, I think, as a kid, it was, my parents, my older brothers. I'm the youngest of four boys, and watching them really taught me how to get away with doing the wrong thing and not getting caught. And then as I grew older and wiser, then I less and less wanted to do the wrong thing. I'd say my parents, I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't well taught Catholicism. I came to, the Bible later, and really approached it as trying to bridge this gap, this leap of faith that I wasn't able to make. And then I started studying other faiths and just trying to get a handle on, what is this, what is the real connection to God? I believe there is a God, and did he send us many messengers? Did he send us only one? And this is the sort of thing I grapple with. But through all that, I benefited from all the teachings. And so regardless of how strong my bridge is, I'm still able to benefit, whether it's the Old Testament, the New Testament, Buddhism, Viracocha, whatever it is, that looks to me like God's trying to help us to connect with him or her.
Yeah.
Then those things have been a huge influence on me. I believe we're connected, and it's up to us to pick up the phone and keep the connection open.
Yeah.
So aside from that, being a student of philosophy and of the religious philosophies, of course, but the philosophers through the ages, the songwriters I consider to be great philosophers, encapsulating big thoughts into poetry, and as a student of all the songwriters, I've learned a lot about myself and about love and about human behavior and what matters, and so those things have and been a big influence. The last thing that I would say would be being my own songwriter, because I've had to look inside so much in order to find feelings that inspire lyrics, that I know myself, I know my own behavior, and I think I understand other people, and so that's kind of made me an even person, I think, where maybe jumping to conclusions too quickly, angering too easily, all those things that can really get you in big trouble, I don't do as much.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Thank you.
Clint, the
Thank you
latest
for sharing.
projects. What are your latest projects? Tell us about them.
Well, I'm promoting a new album that comes out June 19th. It's called Out of Sane, and it's all new music, all original songs except for one. I covered a Harry Nilsson song Fred Neil wrote called Everybody's Talking, and I reinvented the song, but I think kept the spirit of the original vocal metering intact.
Yeah.
And so it's a very good CD, according to me, and I encourage everyone to get it. If you pre-order it, then you can win a Skype like this, where you and, I don't know if it's 20 or 30, whatever it is, of your friends and family, we can all do what we're doing here now together.
That's great.
Part of a contest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm out promoting all of that, and the new song, My Best Thinking. The first IG track off the record is America Still in Love with You. I made a video on that, and one of my friends was a SEAL commander, and known him for years, and one of his best friend was killed in action, Kyle Milliken. And when I was making the video, I had a lot of stock footage, historical footage that I was pulling from to create the video. And I called up my friend and I said, I really need someone to bring the badass to this video.
Yeah.
And we both thought of Kyle. And so he talked to Erin, Kyle's widow, and asked if it was okay. And she sent along some photos, and I picked one to put in the video. And it's of Kyle in uniform holding up an American flag. Comes in about 2 minutes into the video. So I want to honor Kyle through these efforts to promote the music by driving traffic to the Kyle Milliken Foundation website, where you can get to it through clintblack.com. And I'm going to be making some announcements soon about other ways we're going to work to help fund the Kyle Milliken Foundation, which was begun by Kyle's friends in the SEAL community to help Kyle's family, his wife and 2 kids. And once that was done, she felt so much gratitude, and realizing that not all in that military community are getting that kind of support, she shifted the focus of the KMF to broaden it to Gold Star families and anyone else in the oh, my old timey car's here. I gotta go. Anyone else in the military community who might be struggling, whether it's with the loss of a family member, or one former SEAL had a terrible accident and was nearly electrocuted to death, and they helped his family while he recovered. If someone's struggling through this COVID quarantine or illness like that, it's going for a real broad reach. So we want to help to fund that and honor Kyle Milliken and throughout this effort. So that's going to become one of the focal points of everything I do here on.
Great.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, that's fantastic.
That's my privilege.
Yeah,
It's my privilege. It's a privilege, as you guys probably know, doing what you do, to get to meet some of these great Americans and their families, by extension, who sacrifice so much and worry so much. And it makes us all feel good to do anything that not only helps them, but also reassures them that we haven't forgotten about you. Through everything this country goes through, there's a very small percentage of us who give so much. The military, the first responders. I have many friends in law enforcement, and we want to remember them and honor them. And you can do that by going to clintblack.com and clicking through to the Kyle Milliken Foundation page. And even if you only have a little to give, nickels and dimes add up to millions of dollars, and they will change lives.
Well,
thanks for taking the time, Eric, with always great questions. And I have the follow-up, and I don't think you thought you'd be on an interview talking about a snake and a wrestler and Jake the Snake and all the different connections we made, but there's a lot of connections, and appreciate you taking the time, and you're welcome to come back anytime. Okay, Clint?
I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it. Great questions. You made me think. I told my press agent I really didn't want to think, and but I said I'll do anything I can't get out of.
well, thank you for doing it.
All kidding aside, that was great. I love the questions, and
Well,
appreciate your help with the music and with the Kyle Milliken Foundation. Everything you do there would be appreciated.
Awesome.
I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Rulon Gardner. Welcome to the show, Rulon.
Well, thank you for letting me come on and share some of my backdrop in my office where I sell insurance and coach wrestling. So it's a pleasure to be on your guys' show, and glad to be able to share some of the stories in this crazy times we're going through.
Absolutely. Now, how are you surviving the quarantine so far for yourself?
You know, I live in Utah, so we just got done with the state wrestling tournament right as all the, the quarantine stuff started. So we kind of missed out on the opportunity to have our spring season, but we had 2 state champion wrestlers. So we did that. And I live actually kind of south of the big population in Salt Lake. So for me, I'm surrounded by hay fields. And so it's quite nice to not have to, go to the office every day. And today I get to go and actually share some of my stuff in my office, but it's been pretty nice. And being a wrestler, you learn how to kind of go solo by yourself because, you're used to being on the mat, kind of just doing your thing. So in my head, I kind of like it.
Okay. And so it's interesting. I was talking to Howie Mandel today. He loves being quarantined too. Well, there you go. So you're an introvert, not an extrovert. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Dr. Hall, for your first question for Rulon.
Oh, no problem. Well, Rulon, tell us a little bit about kind of like where you're from, where you grew up. I believe it's Wyoming, I'm pretty sure. And how did you get into wrestling?
Well, I was actually born in a small town. If you've heard of Yellowstone in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, we grew up about 70 miles south of there. I actually grew up on a dairy farm, the youngest of 9 children. So there's a term we used on the farm where the cow manure runs downhill. Me being the youngest child, I kind of got a lot of the less desirable work. And so at a young age, I learned how to work hard. I learned how to, commit myself to, helping the family. And as I started my education, I realized I had a learning disability. So is I went to school. I was kind of held back. I was put in special ed. I, had some people try to limit me, but I also had such a good, strong family support group. And then also I had some real good teachers that inspired me to believe in myself and work hard. And being put in special ed, I really kind of struggled sometimes, but I had a lot of people that influenced me. And some of even my best friends and classmates would tease me as a young child. And so for me, I kind of got a little bit of a stiff, backbone. I got a kind of a toughness to me. And I think if you watch a documentary, you see that. It's like, man, this guy, he just, he's not given much, but he works with what he has. And then ultimately I went from, the dairy farm to the Olympics.
So dealing with that
Incredible
disability, the challenges of day-to-day of learning, kind of take us back and us to look at that in more detail. The challenge, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, I was just the youngest, and I had great brothers and sisters that were kind of good role models. And, one of my brothers, Russell, he had the same learning disability, and, he went back and, he got his MBA. He became a special ed teacher and, the director of the special ed department. So, he went back, and some of those teachers that discouraged him, but then also all the positive teachers. For me, I looked up to my brothers and sisters as being my true role models, and, having their example, and then, my mom's passion to help me, because I would go to school and I'd be the last one done taking a test. The kids would come back from recess, and I'm still trying to work my way through those, hard words. And, it was really kind of a struggle and a battle to try to get my education up to par. And in, high school, my sophomore year, I had one of my special ed teacher named Bill Hoops, and he told me, he said, Rulon, you come to school and you give 100%, you have something special in you. For me, I was just, trying to survive. And, he told me if I came and worked hard someday, I would be amazing. And, I heard that, and it convinced me to have confidence more in myself, because I utilized his knowledge of the world. And so it helped motivate me to continue to believe. And, just like wrestling, my brother, who was a year older, used to beat me up until the end of my junior year. I was second best in the family. I was 17 years old, and I was still number 2 in the family. So for me, it wasn't easy. It didn't come natural. So I had to work for everything. But all that, hardship I went through as a young child kind of gave me the character that I could do anything. It may not be today or tomorrow, but eventually through hard work, I'll be successful.
And that's fabulous. Dr. Hall, what next question for Rulon? Go ahead, Dr. Hall, your next question. Oh, next question, Dr. Hall.
He's muted.
Okay. Next question, Dr. Hall.
No problem. Yeah, and that's exciting. I mean, working hard, like you said, hard work, what Rulon says, and having people who are encouraging. And so that's awesome. So now, tell us about, now when you went to college, obviously, you got into wrestling, and so how did that, just being in athletics and wrestling, how did that help you be more disciplined towards school and just your future goals?
Well, as I went in and I actually finally made the varsity wrestling team my senior year, and I won the state championship, but I lost one match. And as I looked at it, I got offered the opportunity to go to college, and I sat down with the high school advisor, and they said, Rulon, it's a waste of your time. You'll never make it to college, to a 4-year or 2-year school. Best choice is go to a technical school. And I told my mother that when I got home, and my mom was a great role model to me. She went back to nursing school when she was 50, became a nurse, and she worked until she was 72 years old. And so my mom was such a great role model. And she called up that high school advisor and said, how dare you tell my son what he can and cannot do? It's not your right. You do not have the right to limit my son's potential. And I left for college. My mom said, Rulon, keep your feet on the ground, your head out of the clouds, and remember who you are and where you're from. And I got the opportunity to go to Ricks College, and I arrived there. I had 2 scholarship offers for junior colleges out of high school, and I went to Ricks, and I asked my coach, I said, Bob Christians, I said, why did you recruit me? Wow. You watched me lose my only match my senior year. He goes, Rulon, the reason I recruited you is with 2 seconds left, you were losing by 3. You still believed you could beat them.
Wow.
And if time expired, your commitment, I could see that you had heart. And if I take my ability as a coach and then your heart, and I combine those two, I can make you a champion. And he ultimately did. And those are the kind of people I had around me that saw something in me and challenged me. It wasn't just positive. It was also oh, we don't think you can do it. Well, let me show you. Let me prove you wrong. And that was something that kind of lived through me. And even at the Olympics, right after I won the match, I got up and I raised my hands and I threw something. Kind of threw something. And what it was all those people through my childhood and my life up to winning the Olympics at 29 years old that have told me I couldn't do something. And I kind of said, look at what I've done. And I put it right back on them, being like, you didn't have the right to limit my potential. Why not just be a positive influence and help uplift me instead of try to tear me down? So for me, those were motivating factors that gave me passion to live my dream. And that was to be an Olympian, to become a teacher.
Wow. And that's so amazing, that story. And so you, in a lot of ways, people wrote you off, it sounds like.
In certain ways, certain people did, because, they just, even other coaches, universities, I'm from Wyoming, town, the smallest state, in the union, for population. And so we didn't have a lot of great wrestlers. We didn't have a lot of tradition. But the one thing about it is you can't measure heart. That's one of the things. And you look at a lot of these, professional football players, they come from these small universities, and, you're just an obscure kid from whatever university. It doesn't matter where you're from. It matters what you got inside. It matters what you do with it. And I started wrestling to, the college level, and then ultimately the Olympics. And I was, the shortest wrestler. I was 6'1". I'm wrestling guys for the bronze medal in 2004. The guy was 6'9". And I'm going to beat him? It's like, holy cow, these guys are better, bigger, stronger, faster, tougher, grittier. But you know what? You can't measure the human desire to get better. And that's what I live for. When I start thinking, the Olympics, I'm like, I didn't want to win a medal. I wanted to make it there. I wanted to show up and I wanted to improve, because you never know what will happen unless you put yourself out there.
Agree. Dr. Hall, next question.
It's incredible. Such an American story. I mean, you can just hear that in his voice, the desire, the drive, just what he's made of. And so, let's talk a little bit about that actual Olympic match. When you won that gold medal, I mean, you were up against an individual who had, what I understand, hadn't lost a match in 13 years.
Wow.
Alexander, I believe it's Krimloff was his name.
Alexander Karelin.
Yes, sir. Tell us about that. Tell us about that feeling. How did you feel going up against this person? You being an underdog, you think, again, your background. Tell us about that. How did you feel?
Well, as I got done with college, I spent 4 years, 2 years at Rick's and then 2 years in Nebraska. And as I got through my senior year, I sat back and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I never won an NCAA title. I was fourth best in the country. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I had people say, quit school. And I had people say, oh, go to the Olympics. But then I spent 2 more years getting my teaching degree, and it took me 6.5 years to become my teacher and coach. And then I took that drive to, what's this Greco-Roman? And then within 4 years of trying Greco-Roman, the first time I won the Olympics. But in the process, I made it to one world team in those 4 years. In 1997, I lost to Alexander Karelin 5-0 in the world championships. And I have a picture. I'm upside down doing a one-handed handstand, and my hand is on the mat. He pile drives me. I land on my face, and my feet kick myself in the back of my head. I break 2 vertebrae in that match wrestling him. And I walked off. I'm like, that guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
He was undefeated when I wrestled him in 2000 for 13 years. But for me, it wasn't just you're just going to make the Olympic team. I had Matt Ghaffari, who in 1996, took second at the Olympics. 97, he took a year off. And so I went to the Worlds and I took, 5th place. 98, he came back and took second. And so I had, 2 other Americans, Jamil Byers in 99, he took 6th at the Worlds. And so coming into 2000, I had to beat 2 of the top 3 wrestlers in the world. And I'm out there competing to beat them. And so finally I beat them. I make the Olympic team. I'm feeling good. I'm like, yeah, I get to go to the Olympics. First thing Coach Frater said, we're not supposed to win a medal. You beat the only guy that was going to win a medal. What are you going to do about it? Oh, I'm going to prove myself. I'm the Olympian. And I was all tough and feeling good and going to the Olympics. And a month before the Olympics, we went to Russia, and it's kind of similar to Miracle on the Ice. Before they went and beat the Russians at the Olympics, and up in New York, Lake Placid. they lost. And I went to Russia, and I'm wrestling the number 2 Russian. Karelin, the big Russian, he didn't waste his time in these little tournaments. So I'm going against the number 2 Russian, and I'm proving how good I was because I'm the Olympian. I went out and I attacked him. Typically, we used to wrestle 2-hour matches in practice, so I would grind people down. I'd wear them down. I'd get them tired. Then I would beat them. I went out there and I attacked him, and I lost my focus because I was going to the Olympics, and I was all high on myself. The number 2 Russian threw me and pinned me in 13 seconds 1 month before the Olympics.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was the best thing to ever happen to me because I got humbled, and I put everything on the table, and I picked up the things that would help me be successful. I left my ego and my attitude and my, all that stuff, all that crap that was bad.
Exactly.
And I got out there and I went and, prepared for the Olympics, and I went in and I got to the Olympics, and, nothing was holding me back. And that's what, propelled me to work my way through to ultimately wrestle Alexander Karelin, the best wrestler of all time, the most intimidating wrestler of all time.
Exactly. Why is your story so compelling? What do you think it is? And now, we're going to talk about the documentary coming up, but why is your story so compelling? Your name, Rulon Gardner, people talk about it all the time. It's not like, there's a lot of Olympians, there's a lot of wrestlers. There's one that we know in Pittsburgh that became a big pro wrestler that's an Olympian, Kurt Angle. But you hear your name is synonymous in this Olympic story. Why?
Well, if you look at it, you have the 80 Olympic team that beat the Russians. It was kind of changed America. You got people to realize, and Karelin was winning Olympic medals back in the 1988 Olympics, and so this was his last Olympics, going for his 4th gold medal. And, it's David and Goliath. The chances of me beating him were 2001. There was 3 guarantees of the Olympics, and he was the biggest one. And so, me walking out there, I came back in my semifinals losing 2-0 to win the match 3-2. And so he's thinking this is going to be easy. So before the match had even started, they told people, oh, this is his 4th gold medal. This is a retirement party. Come, and everybody's already invited to his retirement party before we even wrestled. And so when I got out there and I got the opportunity to compete, and I realized, this guy truly was the best of all time, I just went out there, and what was kind of funny is my coaches were like, Rulon, Karelin's not warming up. He's not ready. Rulon, you can beat him. Rulon. Yeah. And I'm like, please, just kind of leave me alone, coaches. And my coaches were kind of upset. They're like, we're the Olympic coaches. And I'm like, just leave me alone.
Exactly.
Because I went to practice every day, and I lived in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, just an amazing facility. And when I walked out on that mat in Sydney, I'd walk that walk 1,000 times. They always say, act like you've been there before in sporting events. And so I walked out there. It was just like any other day in practice. People say, were you scared? I'm like, well, yeah. He broke my neck before. Was I fearful? A little. But did I think I could beat him? No. But did I have a chance to compete? I said, yes. In life, we have these big mountains, and everybody's like, I can't climb that mountain. I can't beat that mountain. What do? You break it down one step at a time, one position at a time. And Coach Frazier, who was my coach, he's like, hey, the way we're going to beat him is you're going to get in his face. He expects to dominate you because he's so physically strong. If you shook his hand, Karelin would shake your hand, and he'd use his other hand, and your hand would disappear, and your arm was shrunk, and it was like, holy, he's a big man. And so Karelin used that intimidating factor. And so for me, having wrestled him 3 years previous, losing 5-0, I had the closest match in the last 10 years with him, and that was my first year wrestling at the Worlds. And so I hadn't wrestled since then. And so, I was kind of unknown. I didn't have any pedigree. And so for me, it was an opportunity of a lifetime. I'm like, worst case scenario, I'll have a cool video of him throwing me on my head again. I'll have me winning the silver medal. So, people in the previous Olympics and Worlds actually roll over and pin themselves because they don't want to get hurt. Yeah. And so our coach, Coach Frazier, he always said, first contact, take control of the match, take control of your destiny. Don't leave it up to fate. Don't leave it up to chance. And so that's what I did. And, I got done and I won the Olympics, and everybody came back and did all these great talk shows, and everybody's like, how did you win? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, what do you mean you don't know?
So it's almost
Like, seriously, we
Yeah.
didn't have a plan.
It seems like the same underdog story as Rocky versus Ivan Drago.
Yep.
And it's the same story as the 80 Olympics or something that just blew a sports upset of all time. And that's what made it. Even though Greco-Roman wrestling wasn't that popular, you put it on the map with that upset.
We kind of did. And if you look at wrestling, in 2012, I went to Afghanistan. So we went to Bishkek, Kazakhstan, and we're in the middle of Russia. And they're like, hey, do you want to do a clinic? And I'm like, sure. We had 250 kids show up like within an hour. And it was like, oh my gosh. And this is the middle of nowhere. Right. And that's the one thing about wrestling is it comes from, Greco-Roman, it comes from the Greeks and the Romans. And you look at the history, wrestling is like one of the original Olympic sports. And so for me as an athlete to be able to do that sport and have that history, I was truly in awe just to have the chance to be an Olympian, to be an American and be on that stage.
Absolutely. All right.
Wow.
Dr. Hall, you have to summarize Rulin, and then we're going to talk about the documentary really quickly because we only have a few minutes. Summarize Rulin, and we definitely have to have you back on the show especially after we stay friends for sure, wrestler to wrestler for sure, where we have a longer story. But go ahead and summarize, Dr. Hall.
No problem. Really, one of nine. Just really a guy, a farm boy from a small town in Wyoming who used heart, who listened to his elders and his coaches, used grit to become a champ in college, and has shown what an underdog can do, okay? Following the principles, believing in himself, using heart, not letting names hold him back, but taking his education to show himself as a gold medalist Olympic champ. And a great example for our young people and our citizens here in the United States. Thank you, Rulon.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And, the thing about it is, we all can do great things. And, I bring my gold medal to show you today. It wasn't about, winning medals. It was about going out there and personally, sacrificing and just following through with a goal. And that was a dream to see what you can accomplish. And I think, living in America, living in this great land and living in the times we are right now, there's so much adversity and challenges, but we got to remember long-term, what our goal is. And that's to try to help everybody survive through these horrific, incidences are going around the world and here in the States and maybe in your family. So it just brings us back. I think it makes us really kind of sit back and look at where we're at today.
Last thing, documentary coming out first week in June. How excited? Just give us a quick 30-second, those quick card finish ups, where we can watch the documentary coming out June 2nd, right?
Yep, it is. It will be actually on the Olympic Channel, and then it'll also be on the olympicchannel.com. And so you can go there, you can watch it. The documentary, people say Rulon Gardner won't die. I say Rulon Gardner wants to live, but people think that I have this death wish, and I don't, because every day on the farm was a near-death experience. Every day going to school I felt was a near-death experience, because if you give up on yourself, you've given up and you're kind of giving up to death. And so for me, I didn't give up on myself. I wanted to come back. And, after the Olympics, it was amazing. I came back. I won the world championships. I almost died snowmobiling. I came back from that. I won the Olympic bronze medal with no feeling in my feet. And then after that, I was in a plane wreck. And I've been through so much, ups and downs and just great highs and some pretty traumatic lows. Right now, I get to sell insurance. I, work as an independent insurance agent here in Utah. I'm a high school wrestling coach. I'm the head wrestling coach at Harriman High School, where we have a bunch of great young men, and I get to be a role model and help people around the country and try to make a difference. And, my biggest struggle and challenge right now is I got to get healthy. I want to get back to my Olympic weight. I saw that, the documentary, I looked and I'm like, man, I really need to be accountable for myself, because I've been lazy for the last 10 years. And, right now I have a goal to get back to my Olympic weight so I can help coach my kids and make a difference. So, every day it's about improving and making yourself better, because ultimately Rulon Gardner doesn't want to die.